If I told you that you could glow in the dark, that your skin could shimmer, that your smile could light up a room, literally, would you believe me if I also told you that same glow would eat your bones from the inside out? Today's story isn't a legend, it isn't a folklore, it isn't conspiracy. It's documented, it's scientific, and it's horrifying. This is the story of the Radium Girls. Hi, welcome back to the Weird Realm, where today's story is going to be about the Radium Girls. And once you hear it, you'll never look at an old watch the same way again. In 1898, Marie and Pierre Curie discovered a new element, radium. It glowed faintly in the dark. It emitted invisible energy, radiation, without flame, without heat. At the time, radiation was mysterious, magical, revolutionary. No one fully understood what it did to the human body, but they were fascinated. By the early 1900s, radium wasn't feared. It was celebrated. It was sold as a health tonic, a cure for arthritis, an anti-aging miracle, an ingredient in cosmetics, even toothpaste. Women could buy face creams containing radium. Products like Thoradia promised youth and vitality. People drank radium-infused water. They believed it made them stronger, more alive. No one suspected that it was silently damaging DNA, destroying bone marrow and poisoning the blood. And then World War I came. In 1917, the United States entered World War I. The military needed watches and instrument dials that soldiers could read in the dark. The solution? Radioluminescent paint. The United States Radium Corporation, originally called the Radium Luminous Material Corporation, opened a plant in Orange, New Jersey. They manufactured a glowing paint called Undark. It was made from powdered radium, zinc sulfide, gum arabic, and water. It looked harmless, almost pretty. The company hired mostly young women, teenagers, girls as young as 14. You may be asking, why women? Because they were considered delicate, detail-oriented, cheaper than men. At its peak, the orange plant employed nearly 300 workers. Across the US and Canada, nearly 4,000 dial painters would eventually work with radium. They were paid per piece, 1.5 cents per dial, which is about $3.75 per shift, which would be roughly $90 to $95 in today's currency. For many working class families, that was good money. The girls were proud of their jobs. They were patriotic. They were told they were helping win the war. To paint the tiny numbers on the watch faces, workers used camel hair brushes. After a few strokes, the brushes would lose their fine point, so supervisors gave them a technique lip dip paint. They were told to place the brush between their lips to shape it into a fine tip, then dip it into the radium paint, then paint again, over and over and over. Each shift they ingested radium dozens, sometimes hundreds of times. Meanwhile, in the same building, chemists handled radiation using lead screens, protective gloves, tongs, and masks. They knew radiation was dangerous, but the girls, they were told it was harmless. Some were even told it was healthy. The girls would paint their fingernails with it, their teeth, their faces before going out dancing. At night, they glowed. Now, imagine walking into a dark room and seeing your own body shimmer. They called it beautiful. They didn't know that they were turning their bones radioactive. By 1922, things began to change. Dentists in New Jersey started seeing strange cases. Young women, severe tooth pain, loose teeth, ulcers that wouldn't heal. When teeth were extracted, the wounds refused to close. Then something worse happened. Their jaws began to deteriorate. Bone tissue died. Sections of the jawbone would crumble. This condition became known as radium jaw. The woman's jaw reportedly detached from her skull before she died. Doctors were confused. Some suspected infection. Others whispered about radiation. But the company denied responsibility. And by 1924, at least 50 women were sick and at least a dozen had died. By 1927, more than 50 deaths were linked to radium poisoning. Many were buried in Rosedale Cemetery in Orange, New Jersey. Some reports suggest that decades later, Geiger counters still detected faint radiation near certain graves. Their bones had become radioactive. The United States Radium Corporation knew radium had risks. They distribute literature to medical professionals describing its dangers. But publicly, they denied everything. In the early 1920s, the company hired Dr. Cecil Kent Drinker and Dr. Catherine Rotan Drinker from Harvard to investigate. The Drinkers discovered radium dust in the air, contamination on surfaces, and no protective equipment for the workers. Drinker concluded that radium exposure was causing the illnesses. Company president Arthur Rodier disagreed. He blamed infections. He threatened legal action. When Drinker prepared to publish his findings, the company submitted an altered version of the report to the New Jersey Department of Labor. Alice Hamilton, a public health physician, discovered the alteration. Drinker published the original findings anyway. Meanwhile, the company began attacking the women's reputations. They claimed the illnesses were caused by syphilis. They implied moral behavior. Imagine dying, being told your death was your own fault. Grace Fryer had worked at the orange plant from 1917 to 1920. She developed severe anemia and bone damage. She wanted justice. But it took her 2 years to find a lawyer willing to take on the United States Radium Corporation. Corporations were powerful. The women were dying. Finally, in 1927, 5 women filed suit. Grace Fryer, Edna Huntsman, Catherine Schaub, Quinta McDonald, and Albina Rice. They became known as the Radium Girls. In January of 1928, When they appeared in court, 2 were bedridden. None could raise their arm to take an oath. Their attorneys say when you have heard that you are going to die and every newspaper you pick up prints about what amounts to your obituary, there's nothing else. The company delayed proceedings. They hoped the women would die before trial. In autumn of 1928, the case was settled, each woman receiving $10,000, which is about $188,000 today, $600 per year for life, medical and legal expenses covered, and all 5 were dead by the 1930s. In 1922, the Radium Dial Company opened in Ottawa, Illinois. They used the same technique, lip dip paint. Their largest client was West Clocks. By 1927, women there began falling ill. Management claimed radium was safe. They even lectured employees about its supposed harmlessness. 5 women eventually brought their case to the Illinois Industrial Commission in 1937. Attorney Leonard Grossman represented them without pay. In 1938, the commission ruled in favor of the women. Radium Dial appealed. October 23, 1939, the Supreme Court refused to hear the appeal. The lower ruling stood, but many women died before receiving compensation. Catherine Donahue passed away before final resolution. In 1933, scientist Robley D. Evans measured radon exhalations from formal dial painters. By 1941, the National Bureau of Standards established a radium tolerance level of 0.1 microlis. In 1968, the Center for Human Radiology was founded at Argonne National Laboratory. And by 1993, 2,403 cases had been documented and studied. Research revealed radium-228 was particularly dangerous. Bone cancer rates were significantly elevated. Alpha radiation caused devastating internal damage. Radium paint continued to be used into the 1960s and 70s. The last radium paint factory closed in 1978. The last known radium girl, Mabel Williams, was alive as of 2015. The Radium Girls changed labor laws forever. Their case helped establish workers' rights to sue corporations, recognition of occupational diseases, industrial safety standards, protective equipment requirements, and 1949 federal occupational disease compensation laws. They helped create modern workplace protections. Their suffering forced accountability. They were teenagers. They trusted their employers. They believed the science they were told. Instead, their bones became radioactive. Their blood turned toxic. Their jaws dissolved. They glowed in the dark, but they also illuminated something else: corporate negligence, medical corruption, the cost of silence. They forced the world to confront the truth, and today we remember them because history doesn't just fade. Sometimes it glows. Thank you for tuning in to The Weird Realm. I will see you in the next one.